you could leverage into it. And I didn't have enough cash for my investing to really be powerful outside of leverage. It would go up in value, it would cash flow. So it was like, as long as you could close on the thing, it would pay you to own it.
Hey guys, welcome to REsimpli Mastermind Call. I'm excited. This one is going to be a great call. This is something that I'm looking to kind of learn, from David on how he's built an amazing community of followers. All right, guys. So we have David Pere from Military to Millionaire on this call. Super excited to have him. David, why don't you just get started and give us a quick kind of background about yourself, and then we can just go into Q&A from there.
Yeah, absolutely. The real background is that I spent 13 years in the Marine Corps, and about 7 years into that, I stumbled into real estate investing. So at the time I had a negative net worth. I was an enlisted guy, so I didn't really make any money. And I was really trying to get out of the rat race because I was working as a recruiter. So 80 to 120-hour weeks. And I was just crazy. So I get into real estate and, I house hack, then I buy a 10 unit, then I buy a couple other small properties. And then when I started to scale it up, I met Ryan Dossie, joined CCF. And from there is where I found REsimpli and started wholesaling and investing a lot more, doing some wholesale, some flips, some burrs. At one point we were doing, 4 or 5 deals a month. And then I kind of scaled that back down to focus on bigger deals and capital raising. But essentially joined in 08, 2015, had no money. By 2021, I was, quote, millionaire, but had enough cash flow and everything that I was able to walk out of the Marine Corps at 13 years with no retirement and haven't had to take a job yet. So now I kind of work on run a brand online called From Military to Millionaire, helping service members and vets learn how to use their benefits and their VA loan and invest in real estate. So I think that pretty much covers it all. I guess the point of this chat is I would consider myself to be a pretty decent networker, and I've got a decent amount of experience at this point with, I guess, content marketing, right? I've got YouTube, Instagram, Facebook
Absolutely.
group, every
Yeah,
platform
you
that you can
have
think
you
of.
have an amazing community that you built. So one question I had before we get into it, like why real estate? It was just like I understand the goal was financial freedom, but was real estate something watch someone, you on online, or were you like following a guru or coach? I'm just curious kind of why real estate.
Yeah, it's funny. I got into it because somebody was trying to sell me on joining Amway, like the multi-level marketing
Uh,
community. And they handed me the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that kind of backfired, I guess, because instead of joining Amway, I went and I was like, oh, cash flow sounds cool. And so I started reading some more of his books. And at the time, a lot of his books were geared towards real estate and or tax stuff. And then from there, as I'm listening to books on tape or on audio, anytime I came across a question or a word that I didn't understand, I would just go to Google. And what I found very quickly was this site, Bigger Pockets, kept popping up as like
right.
the answer to all my questions. And I was like, fine. Well, eventually I got to the point where I'm like, I'm just going to go to Bigger Pockets and look for this question because apparently they have all the answers. And then that led me down the Brandon Turner books and the podcast. And next thing I know, I'm, a duplex in and obsessed with like what's next. And then once I lived in the one side of the duplex for about 6 months, and then I got stationed out of state. And when I moved out and that thing started paying me every month, I was hooked. It's like, wow, I have a property manager. I'm not doing anything. This thing's paying me. It's paying down the mortgage. Like, this is great. And so we just kind of went from there.
All right. So you started with that, and then what was your journey after? Did you buy like a couple of more properties, a couple of more rental properties? That kind of what you started doing? And what market are you investing in?
I am primarily invested in the Southwest Missouri area, Springfield,
Okay.
Buffalo, Bolivar, Branson, Stockton Lake kind of areas.
Okay. Yeah. So
And
then
then
what was your journey after that? You bought the duplex. Then what happened after that?
Well, then I had no money. I didn't know how to find off market deals. I didn't have any capital. I didn't know how to raise capital. I had no following. So I basically just nerded out on books and podcasts for a year and a half while I saved up my measly paycheck. Because at the time, I think I was making 39 to 42 a year in taxable income, something like that from the Marine Corps. And so I was, I even did some side hustles. Like I would do some garage sale flipping and other things. So saving cash. And then one day I wrote probably like 110 letters by hand. I had a 24-hour shift. I call it standing duty. I had a yellow legal pad and a list of duplexes that were absentee owned in Springfield, Missouri. And so I just started handwriting. I wrote like 100 something letters. My hand was like frozen shut when I was done. I was like, I don't think I can let go of this pen. My hand's so cramped up, which I never did again because it was terrible. But in that, somebody called me back and said, I have a duplex. I'm not interested in selling it, but I have a 10 unit that I would sell. And that actually ended up being to date the best deal I've ever done. He wanted it bad or gone bad enough that he was willing to negotiate on price. He carried 10% of the down payment back as a second position loan. So I only had to come out of pocket 4.9%. And we closed after a bunch of different negotiations. We closed it at $212,500, and I brought $10,990 and some change to the table.
Oh, incredible.
And then that thing cash flowed, some months negative, but most of the time it was, like 400 to 1,000 a month net. And so over the 4 years to a day that I owned it, it cash flowed each year in whole, maybe not every month, but every year. And then I sold it. So I bought it for 212. I sold it for 340 4 years to the day later, and I had only brought just under 11 grand into that deal.
Oh, that's some decent ROI.
Yeah. So I wish I could, if I could go back, I would buy everything I possibly could in 2015, 16, 17. And then during that time, I bought 2 other duplexes, a fourplex, probably held on to 10 or 15 home single families. And then I've kind of sold everything under 5 doors that hasn't been renovated in the last like 2.5 years. Somewhere along the way, I just kind of realized like I'll buy and hold anything that looks like it makes sense. So I've got a 40 unit hotel, 2 apartments, an RV park that I'm a owner in. And then I've also got there's like 940 doors worth of like syndications where I'm a GP, but my ownership percentage on that is minimal, like 1%. So I don't really count them. And yeah, that's kind of the shtick for how I got into real estate and why. I mean, really, it was just you could leverage into it. And I didn't have enough cash for my investing to really be powerful outside of leverage. And it, would go up in value. It would cash flow. So it was like, as long as you could close on the thing, it would pay you to own it. And that just made sense to me.
All right. So you started buying real estate. Then what led you down the path of, starting a community? Were people coming up to you, or you thought, hey, this would be, if I could do it, I have to go out and spread the message?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of an anomaly, I think, in that there was no plan or motive. Nobody was asking me questions because I didn't know anything. So good thing they weren't. No one knew who I was. And my buddy, I call him a friend, and I would say he is a friend at this point. Brandon Turner, though, I had met him in 2017. So everyone seems to know who he is in the real estate space. I met him at a beach in Oahu and ended up surfing with him for like 4 hours. And then we kind of hit it off. And as he was trying to move to Oahu, Maui, I even like stored his car in my garage on base for like 4 months while he was back in Washington. And at one point he was over at my house on base for dinner, and I was asking him about how to write a book, totally unrelated to real estate. I had an idea to write about my time in Afghanistan. I have like a journal and a mission log, and was thinking it'd be cool to do like a non-Navy SEAL experience in Afghanistan, like what normal people did. And then I was asking him how to write, and he was like, dude, you should start a blog. You just start a blog and you'll learn how to write. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I'm like, what should I blog about? He's like, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of people in the military that buy real estate, but none of them talk about it. Just document what you're learning. So like, if you go back to my blog, some of the first articles I wrote are like, I got screwed by somebody who told me you can only use the VA loan once, and that was a lie. Here's the truth. And, or, this is how you use Google advanced search to find better answers for what just random articles. And then I didn't even come up with the name From Military to Millionaire. A friend of mine came up with that. And
that's an amazing name, by the way. That's
I wish I could steal credit for it, right? Yeah. I put out like 9 or 10 names to my Facebook friends, and nobody liked any of them. And then this guy who was a friend of mine who was never in the military was like, hey, this domain's open. I was like, ooh, that's catchy. Let's do that.
Right.
And so then I just started blogging. And then, after a little while, I was like, oh, what if I have like an Instagram or a Facebook so I can kind of put these articles out, and, if I get feedback, I'll know how to be a better writer. And then people did start asking questions. Probably 6 months to a year later, people started asking questions in the comments or whatever. And I would, I'd go, oh, wow, I got the same question about the VA loan 3 times. Maybe I should go research this and write an article on that so that I can answer that. Next time someone asks me that question, I can just point them to this link. And then one day that just kind of exploded. I remember in 2020, probably like June-ish, my Facebook group had this is 2.5 years into it. It probably had 6,000 people in it. And then one day it went from like 100 people a week would request to join to like 100 a day, 200 a day, 300 a day. And we went from like 6,000 to like 40 something thousand people in like 6 months. And I was like, oh, and that was really when it clicked. I was like, oh, I have a business here. I
Right.
should, I
It's so
should
like
figure out how to
truly,
monetize
truly
this.
organic. Like this is truly organic. So I just want to understand. So for the first 6 months or so, you were writing blogs, but weren't gaining any traction. Like you weren't no comments. That must have been tough, right? Like just writing blogs and then not knowing like the audience it was reaching out to, the impact it was having, or how did you like manage that?
Yeah, I think that right there is the perfect explanation for why consistency wins in content and most things online. Luckily, it's a love hate, because I would say most of the things I wrote in that first 6 months, I wouldn't have been very proud of people seeing. I would have been pretty, not embarrassed, but I was not a good writer. I'm still not what I would consider a great writer, and I wasn't a good writer. My thoughts were all over the place. I was rigid. You could tell a lot of it was just researched and then dropped in like a research paper, and so it would have been cool if people had kind of noticed, but at the same time, I don't know. Like there's that fear that holds people back from like, well, I don't know if I want to get started, because they're like nervous about how people are going to perceive what they're putting out. And the reality is, and I always tell people this, my buddy Alex Felice said it better than anyone. He's like, how conceited of you to think that anybody's going to watch the first bit of content you put out. Nobody knows or
Right.
cares who you are. And as rough as that sounds, I saw a Semper Fi comment in the chat there. So whichever, I think that was Bob, he gets it. That's the Marine Corps way, right? You're not special. Get over it. Um, and so, with content, people get so nervous about what the perception is going to be that they never post anything. And the reality is, like, for that first little bit, you're not going to gain any traction. And you're gonna be able to just throw stuff out to the universe, get more comfortable with it. And then by the time people start finding you, you'll be much more polished. And you can crank it up. You can make it faster by running ads or doing podcasts. I mean, I wasn't doing podcasts as a guest yet, so I wasn't putting myself out there. So yeah, I mean, it was a little. I guess it would have probably been disheartening if it had been a goal of mine to build a platform, but
Right.
I was just kind of rocking and rolling, doing my own thing in my own little world, oblivious about what was going on.
So someone who's looking to like start a community, right? What would you tell them? Let's say, I want to start a community. I'm a real estate investor. I want to start a community of other fellow real estate investors. Like, where should they start with? I mean, go create a Facebook group, or like you said, you started writing blogs, or then maybe they do videos. Like, what's the best way to get started? Like you're so right about like consistency always wins, and that's what we tell anybody that comes to us and says, "Hey, which marketing channel should I pick?" We always say the one that you can stick with the longest. At the end of the day, every marketing channel works, but the one that you can stick with the longest, do that. Don't do direct mail for a month, then cold calling, then PPC. Nothing is going to work. So what would you say to that? Somebody is looking to like start a community, nothing as big as you are, just like maybe to their local network, local RIA, something along those lines.
Yeah, first off, just to validate your point there, it took me 4 months of between $2,000 and $5,000 a month worth of mailers before I landed my first off market deal. And in that 72-hour window of landing that first off market deal, we locked up 7. So
Wow.
so it's a really weird game of
It
like,
is.
oh hey, wow, this worked.
Yeah.
But it was nothing for a while, and we were getting pretty leery that it wasn't going to work. So I think the first thing is push pause and really spend time figuring out like why you want to build a platform, what's your end goal, and who's your avatar. Those are the ultimately like the most important thing, is figuring out like who your message is for, what you want that person to see and or do, and then go from there. Like if you're creating a comedy account, you just want to make people laugh, figure out who your demographic is and tailor your content towards them. But if you're looking, in the real estate space, a lot of times it's I want buyers for my wholesale list, or I want private money lenders, or I want accredited investors for 506c syndications, or whatever that is. Then you got to really dial in on the avatar. If it's raising capital from a 506c accredited investor, maybe you have a background as a doctor, or maybe you know high high paid professionals in various, accounting degree, or lawyers, doctors, whatever. And so you can find a way to target that demographic with your content to where it would get in front of them. You're going to pick up other people along the way, but a good example of this would be, there's a community called white coat investors, and they are just financial advice for doctors. And then eventually they started raising capital, I believe. And, but that was their niche. So all they had in their audience was accredited doctors. So you got to really figure out who it is you want to talk to. So for me right now, right, my avatar is 25 to 35-year-old males, basically military age males. And, they're usually fairly low income W-2 with full benefits, a lot of drive, a lot of, they're capable of being very consistent, and they've got a lot of grit, and they're good decision makers, but they don't really have good financial skills. And so it's like the basic financial education and then just basic real estate stuff. So a lot of my stuff is kind of the lower level of getting people started. And then I do have some higher tier topics, but most of my stuff is reaching that young service member who's probably done what I did, which is, buy tattoos, cars, take women on dates, alcohol, and have no money, to show for it. And then they're like, oh, I want money. How do I change my life? And then once you figure that out, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's figure out what platform, A, what platform your audience is on, and B, what platform you like. I love a good Facebook group. I think Facebook groups are huge. They're the best social media for actually building a community, right? YouTube's great for like evergreen content and having people find you based on what they're looking for. But there's really not much engagement within YouTube. There's comments, but like you can't really foster that relationship. You don't even know who half the people are because they're hiding behind some fake username. Facebook, you can have conversations, you can tag people, you can learn who they are, you can go to their profile and really get to know them. And so it's much better for fostering a community. And then if you're trying to do really short content to reach younger population, maybe you go for TikTok, but it's got to be something that your audience is on and something that you can you find sustainable to do.
No, that's great advice. One question I have for you is, how important is it? I'm curious, like when you started this, were you already thinking about monetizing it, or you were just doing it because like you wanted to, share, like solve a pain point, right? Solve a problem that people have. But in the back of your mind, were you already thinking about monetizing it?
I mean, I guess technically, right? I was thinking about how to write a book, but there was not really a monetization plan or angle behind it. In fact, I kind of stumbled into my first monetization plan on accident. I had recommended 2 or 3 people to buy a house from a good friend of mine who's a real estate agent in San Francisco area because they were moving there. And I'd been making recommendations to people I knew as agents for a little while. And my buddy was like, if you got your license, I could pay you like 25% of my commission for sending all these introductions. And that was like that was the first kind of eye-opening moment of, I can still add all this value and I can get paid for doing it, which is really cool.
You're actually, I want to go back and say, you're so right about Facebook versus YouTube, that you get the interaction that you get in Facebook. The community that you build is totally different from, YouTube. Like you have people commenting on your video, but you don't really get to, interact with them. So that's really true. With you, how comfortable were you, with you started writing content, then you started, doing videos and stuff? Like, was that an easy transition for you? Or, do you have some reservation on kind of, your comfort level with starting making videos?
Yeah, luckily I was always a good, probably too good talker. I have a harder time shutting up than I do conversating. That being said, it's definitely not simple or comfortable to get on camera. The first video I did was like in the closet of my house on base, and the lighting's terrible, everything's terrible, and you can tell I'm nervous. And then there's a couple other videos in that first few months where, I'd watch the video and realize like, I go back and watch it and it's like, man, I thought I was good. I thought I was comfortable, but it's a whole different level from where I'm at now. I don't think I had as many reservations about it as a lot of people do. Like a lot of people just freeze when the camera comes on. And I just viewed it as, talking about whatever I wanted to talk about to myself. Took me a while to learn to like look in the lens and stuff like that, but
right. Yeah. And how are you coming up with, like, now with the community that you've built, how are you coming up with things to talk about? Is it primarily driven by the community, the questions that your community is asking, and that's kind of what you're basing your content on? I'm curious, like, what you're doing with that.
That is a good one. I do utilize that as we notice trends within the community, and common questions. We will go and we'll make videos about that. I like to try to do evergreen stuff, so I like to make videos where I'm answering a question that my audience members might have. So when they start searching online for it, they might find me. I do that for evergreen stuff too. So like REI Sift, I made an affiliate video about them, and if you Google like what is REI Sift, I think you'll still see two of my videos pop up before their actual company does. And so I try to do that, which is good. But a lot of it is like literally yesterday, I was just looking at videos on YouTube Shorts that had a ton of views, and I was just kind of clicking through the videos in that topic that had 500,000 plus views, and I would just watch their content and say, well, hey, can I make my own spin on something that's kind of similar, or these are common topics or questions that are getting a lot of engagement, so let me go make some content about that. And then also, I think some of it's also just whatever ideas pop into my head. I have a Google Keep, and if I think of something, I throw it up, and some of them are serious and good, and some of them are absolutely ridiculous. They're not always lucky. Good thing about my brand is it's all service members and vets, so I can do ridiculous things and talk smack about people and have fun with it, and people seem to love it. So the example, I guess, is that this video hasn't come out yet. I just filmed it today, but I was caught by somebody kind of talking, I guess you could say, talking smack about women getting cosmetic surgery and then showing off a lot to raise capital being like a new trend online. And I was talking with somebody who had recently done some cosmetic surgery. And then I was like, you know what, this would be a great video. So I like went and grabbed a cucumber and like stuffed my sweatpants and was like, we're going to make a video talking smack about this. So like that video has no educational value at all. It is funny, but it'll probably get more views than most of my real educational stuff, and it'll pull people in, and then they'll see the real stuff. But so sometimes it's just ridiculously stupid ideas like that, but you never know.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then the content that you're making on the educational stuff, right? There's already so much content out there on YouTube, blogs, Facebook, everywhere. What are you doing to like get noticed? Just being kind of who you are. Are you putting like, you being intentional about putting some spin to the videos? What are some of the things that you're doing?
Yeah, I need to do more ad spend. I'd like to run ads to actually get some growth going, but I think some of the biggest things you can do to grow are guesting on another podcast, getting in front of somebody else's audience that way, just being social online. So sometimes I go and find other content in my niche and I'll just go comment on it. On Instagram, you just go drop comments on popular posts or new posts, and if people like your comment, they'll engage with you and maybe they'll go follow you. So that's another viable strategy. But I think SEO, right? So search engine stuff where they can find you, and then collaborating with people or tagging people. I'm definitely just myself. So sometimes that resonates with people. And I've had plenty of people tell me they unfollowed me because I said a cuss word they didn't like, or I wasn't politically correct about, XYZ. And I'm like, well, I really don't care. Goodbye. You're not my avatar anyway, because my avatar is a bunch of Marines that don't really care about any of that. So they just say what's on their mind. And so, and nothing I'm saying is like attacking any group or whatever. It's just all in good fun, and most of it's poking fun at myself. Another random example, and this video actually got a ton of engagement for I don't know. I made a video explaining why I often drive to events instead of flying, because I'm like notoriously known as a road tripper. I'm always in my car. And so I made a video explaining that, breaking out the mileage and the cost and all the other intangible benefits. But I did it wearing my ridiculous Halloween costume as a like lumberjack with short jean shorts on. And for whatever reason, like people just love that. They're like, oh my gosh, Dave's being an idiot. It's like, this is hilarious. I'll watch his content. And so, I've found that the more I lean into not trying to be polished and like overly professional, the more people in my audience resonate with it. But I think that's going to differ, depending on your avatar. My avatar, like they love that. If I was trying to, get in front of doctors to invest passively in my syndications, I would probably wear a white lab coat or scrubs or, or a suit and tie. And I would probably not swear or make jokes about male enhancements. And, it would be a lot more polished group. So
David, another question, like, what are you noticing with like the social media trend? Like with Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, are you noticing like, do you have to be on multiple platforms? Or you could just be on one platform that you feel most comfortable with, let's say Facebook, you just feel super comfortable with that and then just kind of grow your audience on that? Or in this day and age, you have to be on multiple platforms because people expect to see you on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever.
I think it's kind of a both. You can absolutely live and thrive on one platform, but it's going to depend on what that platform is. So I would say like a Facebook group, I'd say that's pretty easily standalone. And a TikTok account could very easily be standalone too, but I would never recommend that somebody have only a TikTok because their audience base on TikTok is fleeting, right? It comes and goes very quickly based on the algorithm, and they have a very short attention span, and they're not on your video very long. So I would say if TikTok's your main beast, then you should be focusing on where else to put them. And I love having a Facebook group. So like getting them to go to a Facebook group would be huge. But even, for all these platforms, having an email list is the most important because you control the email list. So if you get shut down on TikTok and that was the only thing you have, you're kind of screwed. But if you've been, dropping lead magnets and getting people to go to your email list and you add 20% of your audience in an email list, at least you can kind of start fresh. With a Facebook group, I ask for emails in the or give the option of dropping an email in the introduction, like the questions for joining. Instagram, it's such a ebb and flow. My Instagram, I went from 0 to 40,000 followers in the first like 3 years, and then I grew like 4,000, and then I basically have been just completely stagnant for the last year. And so I think at some point I used a firearm in a video, and I want to say that it's either because they were like the same month. Both Instagram and TikTok stopped growing at around the same month. And it's either because I dropped a firearm video or it's because I logged in from Peru when I was in Peru. And they think, I don't know. For some reason, neither platform, like I went from 0 to 100,000 followers or 0 to 99,000 followers on TikTok in 9 months. And now I'm at 98,000 followers a year and a half later. So it's like it just hit a stone wall. And they removed that video very quickly. And it's funny because it was a buddy of mine owns a missile silo. So the whole video was us taking his rifle and shooting it into the hole that's 18 stories into the ground. And apparently that's a no-no online. So
interesting.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Sometimes you don't know like how the algorithm works for these social media platforms, what is going to get you in front of more audience or more people versus not. So it's very interesting. And David, with what you're doing now, kind of what's your goal, let's say a year or two out with the community that you're building? And one of the question I have about the lead magnet that I want to ask you also, but yeah, what's your goal? Like, what's your vision, like a year or 2 or 5 years out with the community that you're building?
The ultimate vision is that I want to help 10,000 service members achieve financial freedom.
That's amazing.
The community itself, really, I just want it to be like the main hub for any service member or vet that's looking to learn about finances. So we're going to build out, I have like a really basic free personal finance course, but we're going to take that and add in like an hour of content for each topic from a, series 7, series 6, series 65 advisors. And then we're going to build out just more roadmaps and courses for various niches in real estate. I just kind of want to end up being a hub of, hey, I want to get into real estate. I want to get into investing in index funds. I want to buy stocks. I want to, all things business and or investing kind of hub, because there's a lot of, I think, uniqueness for like benefits that service members have, but also there's just a lot of community there with everyone having, the shared bonding or niche.
Right. And everything only for like service members, correct? Or you're looking to like broaden that in? I mean, I'm sure you get like audience members that are not military, members, but you're still, your goal, all the ads that you're running, all the marketing that you're doing is geared towards service members.
Yeah. All my stuff is, open to anyone. And I would say 80-90% of what we talk about is applicable to anybody, right? If we're talking about a 401k or the thrift savings plan, that's our 401k. Well, anybody who's in a job that has a 401k, the same strategies apply. The VA loan you can replace with FHA loan, and it's pretty much the same conversation. A couple nuanced differences, but that's the majority. And so the only thing I have a mastermind group, and that's the only thing that is actually like we bar the doors unless you're currently serving or already did.
And then Jeremy has a question. How would I increase collaborative work locally when my presence is not well known? Would volunteering be an access point?
Let's see. Are you, Jeremy, are you looking to, you say collaborative work, do you mean like, as far as content, or just like what, can you maybe expound a little bit on like what your goal is there?
Yeah, just I guess making my presence more known through it could be podcasts or maybe joining in on local seminars just to give people more idea of what we do here.
Yeah. And you're looking for like more of a local audience, it sounds like, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Is there within your niche of or real estate or whatever that is, are there already meetups that you can attend? And if not, would you be open to starting your own?
I'm sure there are. I think there are quarterly events that we have people that go to that already. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would
Yeah.
definitely go check all those out and get familiar, talk to people in your niche, network there. If you're comfortable with it or open to it, I think the best thing you could probably do, if it doesn't sound like there's like a stronghold from anybody, is you could start your own real estate meetup. Once a month. The one that I used to host in Hawaii it was once a month, and I would grab pizza and like a 30 pack of beer, and I'd go to the beach, and I'd be like, yo, if you want to talk about real estate and hang out on the beach, come hang out. And then people would show up and they'd eat pizza, drink beer, we'd
Nice.
talk real estate. And to this day, people still, that ended in 2019, and people still remember me from hosting the Windward Real Estate Investor meetup, which I then passed to somebody else and then somebody else. And now I think it kind of died off during COVID, but that's a great way, because if you're the host, people just everybody naturally wants to know who the host is, and they talk to the host, and you're going to build that. So that's a good way. I think, yeah, if you can find local podcasts or other people in your niche from investing, and then you can do, if they have an audience, do like Instagram lives with them or talk with them. But a lot of it, if you're doing local, would be grassroots networking, with the exception of maybe starting a hyper local podcast. So like I don't know, New Orleans real estate investors podcast, and then you only interview local people and they share it to their Facebook group or Facebook page, and then you kind of grow from that, and you're targeting the local demographic.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
But David, I think that's a brilliant idea. Just like buying pizza and beer and just go sit at the beach and be like, hey, anybody want to talk real estate? I think sometimes people tend to overcomplicate. They look at some of the other groups that other investors are running or other companies are running. They look at that as their starting point, when they need to understand that it took a company or it took an individual like years of working hard and getting to that point. Just do something that it doesn't have to be high budget thing. Like you could just buy pizza and just not don't expect to have like 50 people. Just have like 5 people that you hang out with, and maybe next one you have 6, 7, and then just keep growing from that. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
What about lead magnets? I know you said that you have lead magnets to get the email address, and I do agree, like getting the email address at the end of the day, like that's the asset that you own. Like, you could get, I'm not saying you, but anybody could get kicked off Facebook, YouTube, you could get shut down, and then you're like, oh, I don't have any asset that I own. So in this case, like email is the asset that you own. Like, what are some of the ideas on, like your thoughts on like putting a lead magnet where you get, someone to actually give you an email address?
Yeah. So first off, it absolutely could happen to me. My Facebook got hacked in July, and I was out for
wow.
almost
Crazy.
7 weeks. So, luckily I had other people that were the admins on the group, so they could kind of control what was going on. But I had no oversight of Facebook for almost 2 months.
That's crazy.
Again, it kind of goes back to that first question, right? Your avatar, your niche, what your goals are. So for me, I have a free personal finance course that's like a 2-hour presentation with downloadable slide deck that you can present to your unit on basic personal finance stuff. And I give that away for free. You have to log into Teachable with an email. And so it gives me your email address when you log in. I have a net worth tracker. So I use it every month to just kind of calculate my growth. I'm not a huge budgeter, but I track my net worth because I figure that's the big picture. And if things start going the wrong way, I'll be able to kind of go back and ask why. And then, so I'll give that template out to people for their email. I give out a free PDF copy of my book. That's probably my best lead magnet. It's like, hey, you can go buy the book on Amazon, or you can get it for free if you want to just download the PDF. I mean, really, yeah, it's just figuring out like what would be beneficial to your audience. Like, Brandon Turner, his big lead magnet is something to the effect of tax breaks for high income earners. It's a ebook about how to reduce your taxable income for high net worth accredited investors or whatever. And then he brings, all the people who want that book or people who have money, and then they end up in his community and they're investors. And yeah.
All right, Sean, go ahead if you want to unmute and ask your question, man.
Hey, what's up, Dave? First, thanks for your service. Appreciated it. I had a quick question about, I think you had talked about that you focused on multifamily at the beginning. Have you been finding any of those deals lately, and how are you kind of acquiring those deals or finding the sellers for those smaller multifamily properties? I've considered the same thing, and just trying to switch from single family to multi is quite a different world, it seems like.
Yeah. So thank you for the support, by the way. It's interesting with even like duplexes. They seem to vary a lot market to market. It's like you get the mom and pop owners who have some smaller multifamily stuff in California, and you're still talking, they might be a sophisticated investor. They might have owned it for 20, 30 years. It might have a ton of equity, and it's a whole different ballgame. And in the Midwest, it might just kind of be your blue collar guy who bought a property and does everything himself and has no systems. And, so kind of understanding your market, I think, plays into that. Ultimately, the basics are fairly similar as far as analysis and everything else. It's just more the conversation, right? When you're talking actual multifamily properties, odds are, even with the mom and pop, the person that you're talking to actually understands investing. They are an investor. You're going to have potentially less access to seller financing options or, really creative low leverage opportunities. And so it's not the same, I guess, as going into like targeting a absentee homeowner with a tax lien that they're delinquent on that needs to move out. And it's like, that's a really easy conversation. Like, hey, dude, you're going to lose the house. Would you rather get paid or just lose the house? But with the more multifamily, I mean, it's just really a conversation of value. You got to figure out where they're at and go from there. But yeah, I'm kind of staying clear of the apartment world right now because a lot of, yeah, I mean, it's hard to make sense of interest rates being higher than cap rates. And a lot of multifamily investors are really hurting right now. So I think the time to buy that will be 2 or 3 years from now when bridge debt kind of times out. But I am, we're about to close on a 130 unit hotel right outside the Smoky Mountains. Let's see, we've got that. Still looking at, we might be writing an offer on a mobile home park right now. So I'm kind of trying to move into more unique kind of properties. So, a hotel, mobile home park, or self-storage, RV park, that kind of stuff. Because the last 3 of those, RV, mobile home, and storage, are all kind of recession resistant, right? Because they're a more affordable place to live for most people. Yeah. And the hotel is, I think, obviously not that way, but it was compressed in value a ton over the last few years. And so, if you find the right one, I think there's opportunity there.
Gotcha. And are you doing traditional financing on those, or are they a combination of kind of seller traditional debt?
Yeah, originally we were going to assume the loan on the 130 and have a seller carry for the difference.
Yeah.
And that was going to be incredible. We were looking at like a 4x equity multiple over 10 years and just absolutely absurd. Like, returns good enough that we were watering the returns down before sending out the pro forma to investors because we were like, no one's going to believe this. But then the seller got cold feet on the carry. And then after that, the bank was like, well, we're not going to do an assumable, it just that kind of fell out. So now we're looking at a bridge into a USDA. Financing has been a nightmare. Need more coffee. We've had every loan you can think of fall out on financing. And then it's just a really weird situation with the hospitality assets right now. Now the mobile homes, self-storage, RV park, raw land, like those worlds seem to still be pretty open to seller carries. And I think single families will be open to seller carries, wraps, sub to assumptions a lot right now because they want top dollar, but the market won't give it to them unless they're willing to work off the interest rate that they have locked in.
Yeah, I think those VA loans also are one of the few that you can assume also, right?
Yeah, you can assume a VA loan. It has to be your primary residence
Yeah.
or intended to be your primary, but you can assume it even if you're not a veteran. The only downside to that is that the veteran will lose their entitlement until the property's paid off. So that's a bummer, but I mean, maybe not. If it's a 80-year-old veteran who's moving into a home, it doesn't matter. Or if it's somebody who you live in Missouri and that's only $200,000 worth of entitlement and the next house they're buying is a $300,000 house, then it really doesn't matter. So
definitely. Yeah. Well, thanks for that.
Yep.
There's one last question. Is
Oh, yeah.
assumption and sub two different?
Yeah. Assumption is literally putting the mortgage in your name. So like if I was to assume Sean's mortgage, I would go to the bank and say, hey, you need to transfer this mortgage to me with the existing terms. And they would put it in my name and it would be mine. Sub two is same example, except I go to Sean and I'm like, hey, you're going to sign a power of attorney giving me access to the bank accounts to pay this note, and I'm going to make your mortgage payment. And if I don't, I default, you take the property back. And so the risk is still inherent there, where if I fail to make my payments, Sean gets the house back on the sub two, and or Sean has to deal with the bank. Whereas with the assumable loan, it's on me. At that point, I'm the guarantor. So in one situation, you're taking the guarantee, and in the other situation, Sean's still the guarantee. So it's much less risky for the investor to do sub two, but it's much less advantageous to the seller. Very similar though.
Yeah, that's true. Most mortgage companies won't let you assign.
Definitely the benefit of the FHA or VA. Most outside of like occupying it yourself, yeah, you're kind of screwed.
All right, David, thank you so much for coming on a call, man. I know how busy you are, so I really appreciate the time that you spent and kind of shared, insight on how to build a community. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Sure, anything you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, David. Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of the week. I'll see you guys on the next call. Thanks. Bye.